Hello everyone, welcome to Ignition. In today's video we're going to be installing a turbo boost gauge. Okay, so today, like I say, I'm going to be installing a pressure boost gauge for the turbo. Now, this intro is being filmed after I've actually installed it, as halfway through I will show me completely mess it up. I plumbed it into the wrong place, which I obviously only found out once I'd installed it and realised that it wasn't working correctly. So I'm going to show you exactly how I installed it incorrectly, so you can also not make the same mistake, because sometimes I see in videos, you know, people don't show them messing it up, they don't show what they do wrong. So I think it would be very helpful for me to show you exactly what I do wrong and then show you exactly what I do to make it correct. So what I'll do is I'll put "this is wrong," "incorrect," something like that up in the corner of the screen somewhere when it is wrong, so you know not to copy what I'm doing. But if you've got an L200, this is quite a helpful video, because some of the vacuum pipes, there's quite a lot of vacuum lines, so I've tapped into the wrong one to begin with, but I do come up with a solution and it works brilliantly. So what we'll do is we'll crack on and I'll show you exactly what I did wrong, and then I'll show you what I did right. Okay, so moving over to the bench, this is exactly what's come in the box, these three items. The boost gauge itself, which has to be illuminated to be visible, which I find a bit strange, but hopefully it looks good once it's illuminated. In here is our piping, so this is for us to plumb it in from this to go to our turbo piping. And also it comes with this little bracket to help you install it at the back, but I'm not sure if I'll be using this as mine's going to be quite a complex install on the dashboard of my Mitsubishi. Also what you're going to need is obviously some extra wire, because unless you mount this next to your fuse box, you're not going to get very far with this wire. So I actually went along and just bought 4 meters of cable. Not very exciting stuff. I just bought one color because it's not that complex a job. Also, I went on eBay and bought a pack of 5 of these fuse jumpers, but you're only going to need one of them. So what this does is you can search and find your fuse, and you can tap into that fuse and run 2 off of one, which is also really handy. It saves you having to tap into other wires and such. Also, what I'm going to be using, I've got this arrangement of clips. I'm just going to be using a couple of small ones just to clamp onto this so there is no leakage whatsoever. So what we'll do is we'll move over to the car and we'll first figure out where we're going to actually plumb our vacuum lines into. So what I did wrong here is I plumbed directly into the turbo actuator vacuum pipe. Now this was giving me the complete wrong reading, and it was reading negative rather than positive, but as I'd already cut the pipe, I replaced it with a new piece later on. It ended up being a win anyway, as the old pipe didn't really hold on very well, as there's no clamps. So I'm now looking at the cable, the pipe, sorry, that's come with this kit, and I don't have exactly much. I wouldn't say really enough to get up there. I ended up going to the local hardware store and buying the same diameter pipe that came with the kit, as I had nowhere near enough to get it up onto the dash. So I bought about 3 meters here, so I had plenty to work with. As most of you Mitsubishi owners probably already know, these cars are super simple, and just looking under the dash you can pretty much just see the grommet anyway. Probably easier from the engine side, so I'm going to nip round there and you'll probably see it coming through in a second. There's just one piece of plastic I do have to take off. Okay, so this piece of trim is just locked in underneath this plastic floor thing here, so I'll just undo that now. Undoing one of them's enough to lift it up and get the piece of trim out. There we are. That dirty, dusty piece of trim can come out. Okay, now, once this panel's out, you can actually get access to the grommet just through here. So I'm going to poke this pipe through here, and you'll see it come through the floor in a second. And here it is. There is our pipe. So I'm going to pull the majority of that through. So I've got the boost gauge, and we're going to sit in the car, plug it in, turn it on, and fingers crossed that we actually get some kind of pressure. I'm doing this test before I wire it all in. It's just easier to test it beforehand. Okay, so you join me inside the car, and this here is exactly the location I plan on mounting my boost gauge. As you can see, this does not work at all. Whatever the solution is in there has come out, so it doesn't work, so I may as well replace it with my boost gauge. So what we'll do now is plug this in to my pipe, which is through the firewall here, and we will see if it actually gives us some kind of suction. So this is what's happening. Well, that's not working. So here's what I'd initially done. I tapped into this pipe here, which was incorrect. That comes off of the turbo wastegate. So what I did was just replace this with a new piece of pipe, as it couldn't do any harm. And what I did was I found a new vacuum pipe to go from. So the vacuum pipe I've chosen is right here on top of the intake manifold. Now this silver piece here is the intake manifold, and this curved black pipe is what you're looking for on this exact vehicle. The only reason I went for the turbo vacuum was because I did read it on a forum. Someone asked, like, can I go directly from the turbo wastegate actuator? And someone replied yes. So I assumed that it would be okay, but clearly it wasn't. But if we move in here, so that black pipe, the secondary one with the writing on, goes into one of these metal pipes along the edge here and out to this black pipe here. And once it comes out here, this black pipe just went up here to this sensor. So that black pipe was then plugged into my T-junction. I got a new piece of pipe to go from the T-junction back to the sensor, and then of course the last one just goes to my boost gauge. So in simple terms, all I've done is tap into that black pipe right there, which goes into the intake manifold. Okay, so we actually have boost. This car should be running about 10 psi of boost, about 10 to 13 psi. That's like the normal range for one of these. So I'll take it out on a trip once I've completed the install, and it'll be quite interesting to see what boost I'm running. So let's continue with the procedure. I'm going to get this thing off the dashboard, this dome, and I'll take it over to the bench and we will strip it down. Okay, so this piece here is fairly straightforward to remove. All you need is a little plastic pry tool. Now it's just 2 poppers. There we go. Now we've got the back exposed. There's 2 screws here and here, which I'm going to take out. They're just Phillips. Right, so for this part I'm going to need a small stubby little screwdriver, as the windscreen's in the way for a bigger one. So it's just 2 Phillips heads that secure this in place. Now this piece should be able to lift off. And behind there's just one connector, which is for obviously the thermometer. So that just unplugs like so, and it's fairly straightforward from there. Make sure you don't drop this behind the dashboard. I tend to just keep it somewhere well away from the hole, because if it goes down there, it's going to be a job to get it out. There we are. Okay, so all the electronics are now out, and we have the fascia. So you want to keep this intact. This is the main wiring harness for all of this. So we want to keep that to the side, safe and sound. But now we have nothing to worry about wire-wise. I'm going to drill these 3 holes out and we'll see what happens. We need it somewhere in there. Now this is going to be very tricky to get this central. Okay, so it's a winner. And as you can see, some people might say I've butchered that, but I would say I've technically enhanced it. Now what I'm going to do is get that fully bolted in with some washers, of course, because the holes I've drilled are huge. But it leaves, the reason I have done this is for adjustment. This will leave me plenty of adjustment once it's in to line up with the hole. But if you see here, I seem to have got it pretty bang on, and it looks really nice in there. So once this piece of clear plastic's been bolted back on, it will look fantastic. Next job is to take off this piece of plastic right here. I'm going to give this a really nice clean and a test fit. So I'm just securing the boost gauge in with some washers and nuts, and I don't tighten them up too madly as the plastic's quite weak. Then I just put it all back together, exactly how it came apart. There we are, it's all in place, and the turbo gauge looks bang on. Look at that. Must say I'm very happy with that. So now I've got to figure out how to wire this bad boy in. So there's plenty of holes up here to use to feed the wire, and all I've done is pushed it and it's come out directly under here in the passenger footwell, which is absolutely ideal. So what I'm going to do is take a piece of tape, and I'm basically going to take the end of my pipe to the wire and then pull the wire back through, and the tape will come up, the pipe will come up with the tape. The pipe has come up through the dashboard. So that's a good little technique, especially for an area like this. Getting it up sometimes is quite tricky. Mike, yes, that was for you. So the wiring for this job is actually very simple. All I'm doing is attaching two cables, one to the positive and one to the negative, using crimping tools and heat shrink. So you can see that I'm heat shrinking them now. So they attach to the boost gauge. Then on the other ends, I'm using this hoop for the negative, which is the earth. And I'm also attaching our fuse jumper to the positive cable, which goes straight to our fuse box. Okay, so I'm just going to run the positive wire down through the dashboard and hopefully out this hole here. That's the plan. Wahee! There we go. Okay, so positive has come down, which is ideal because this is exactly where we want it to go into the fuse box. And there's our negative. Okay, so our two wires are coming down out here now, and what I'm going to do is take the fuse box off and have a look. So on my fuse diagram here, it's saying that my cigarette outlet is right here, and I know that my cigarette outlet comes on when the ignition's turned on as I run my LED lights from it. So what I'm going to do is use this fuse here, number 7, it's just to tap in. So I've pulled the cigarette lighting fuse out and I'm going to put that into the fuse jumper, also putting another fuse in for the boost gauge, and I'm going to plug that in where I pulled out to the cigarette lighting fuse. So there'll be two fuses running from that one fuse space. And then I sanded a small section down on the seat bolt and bolted the negative wire to it, so it gets a really nice earth on the body of the car. Okay, so it's moment of truth. Oh, and it works! Look at that! That is brilliant. Okay, so the lights work. Now, all I've got to do is relocate the wires somewhere under the floor so you can't see them. Okay, so now all I'm going to do is plug this connector back in, put the two Phillips screws on, and then it's back in place. And then I'll show you exactly what it looks like when it's finished. I'm very excited for this. Okay, so here it is installed in the car. Now I think it looks awesome. It integrates really nicely with the rest of the dials. It doesn't really look out of place. I absolutely love the look of it. So I'll start the car. You can see it sits on 0. And it stays on 0 even when I've started it. I'll let it warm up and then I'll give you a few revs. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a few revs. So the last thing I need to do is of course drive it and see what it's like under load, and also just see how it drives, make sure that I haven't got any boost leaks. Shouldn't have any problems with that, but let's get out. I'll put a GoPro inside the car and we can see what the gauge does as I'm driving. So here I am doing a second gear pull. As you can see, the boost goes right the way up and it's brilliant, but the only problem is it's diagnosed a problem with my car. My car's over boosting, so that's going to be a future video, me changing the wastegate actuator on the turbo. So that concludes the install on the turbo boost gauge. I'm really happy with how it looks, and also it's helped me diagnose a problem, so I couldn't have asked for much more than that. It's one of the best 15 euros I've ever spent on eBay. The only thing is I needed some more vacuum line, so that's the only thing you'll probably have to purchase extra as well. But other than that, the install went really nicely, really smooth. And like I say, it's helped me diagnose a problem. So it's worked out really well for me. Don't copy what I did in the beginning of the video. Make sure you choose the correct vacuum line. But hopefully you've learned something from this, and please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.